La situación ahora es inaceptable. Este presidente ha atacado, ha demonizado los inmigrantes. Es inaceptable. Voy a cambiar.
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
All right, I think that most of you are expecting a debate breakdown. I don't think I'm going to make it too detailed today because obviously it wasn't really a substantive debate. I would say it was one of the most bizarre shows I've ever seen. And I'm kind of in shock from some of it, or kind of, I really would say the state of mind that I'm in right now is that it was I was worn out, and I was watching HB's stream of it, so it could be because it took a lot longer because there were a lot more pauses, but it was tiring and honestly very, very frustrating to watch the debate. So I'm going to hand out pretty short scores for the people in the debate, starting, I guess, from we'll just go in alphabetical order. That's fine, based on this list from CBS. So Cory Booker, I would say, probably got like a C- in the debate. Really was lackluster the entire time. Just emoting, and the bizarre moment, which we'll get to again later, but the Spanish moment, we'll revisit that with Beto. Bill de Blasio actually did not do bad if you're talking about just appearance on stage, but it's Bill de Blasio, so I'd have to give Bill de Blasio a B, because granted, I don't think he has much gravitas. I think many people look at him and they're wondering why he's involved at all, but his performance really shows the confidence that he does bring to the table, and he was able to, talking about the War Powers Act, I believe, talking a lot about police issues and race issues. Those are things where I disagree with him almost 100% on a lot of things, but and then he also had that ridiculous outburst about Russia when they asked what the worst national security threat is. But if you're talking about pure confidence and stage appearance, stage, I guess you would call it, stage persona, I think Bill de Blasio did a good job. And this is hard for me to admit, but it's true. Julian Castro did pretty bad. I would say, I don't know why people are saying that he had a standout performance. I would say that Julian Castro was all about immigration, which is, I would say that this entire debate was about immigration, but it was completely flipped over from what most Americans think, which is that most Americans believe that there should be a standard as to who gets into the country and who doesn't. And these people don't. And that's a real problem when you're talking about how many of these candidates have this disconnect with the American public. You don't have to say that nobody should get in. I know people who say that. That's also fine. I don't think it's reasonable that in the Democratic Party there would be people who would say, well, we should have a zero immigration policy. But there should at least be a couple people who say, well, this is going to be the standard, and I'm sorry, but not everybody gets to come in. And that's really what I got from not just Julian Castro, but a lot of these other people. In terms of the healthcare debate, this was a pretty muddled conversation. I would say that the person who gave maybe the clearest policy position on healthcare was de Blasio. Again, some of these other people like Beto kind of shuffled around, and it was very difficult. The two polls in that debate were Bill de Blasio and John Delaney. And Delaney's performance also, so he's the next person. I would say he's a B plus to an A minus in terms of just being able to show himself on stage. Now, progressive audiences were livid. They hated this guy. They were saying, why is he even there? That's not really the issue. Okay, if you're progressive, I get it. John Delaney would be a horrible candidate for you. He wasn't there to earn your vote. And the fact is that what he's there to prove is that there is, I guess, a big middle in America, and some of those people, and those people will be enough to really grab the Democratic nomination. And if you listen to John Delaney's positions on some of these issues, his position on healthcare, where he said that you can't eliminate private insurance because so many people are satisfied with it. When he's talking about there was a great moment for John Delaney, by the way, something that I think in due time people will have to people will forget, but it's wrong to forget it. John Delaney, when prompted by Rachel Maddow about prosecuting Donald Trump, said that after 2 years of him going around Iowa and campaigning, because he's been campaigning the longest of any candidate. Nobody cares about Russia. Nobody really wants to discuss it when you go through Iowa. People want to talk about jobs. They want to talk about healthcare. They want to talk about, in some cases, farm relief, things like that. Why would any of them care about an investigation that is essentially so complicated and so twisted by various bureaucratic labyrinths? Why would they care? And John Delaney fought back against Rachel Maddow, and that's something that people should pay attention to. I'm not telling you to vote for John Delaney. I'm just saying that on that point, he connected, I believe, with plenty of people. Tulsi Gabbard did not do too good. I would say that she's definitely in the C area during the debate. There is one portion that I'm going to show, which I think was her strongest conversation point. But the truth is that if you look at let me see if there's even a photo here. So this isn't the photo I wanted, and it actually features three of the front runners that the debate was really trying to focus on: Booker, Castro, and Warren. But you can see at least here, Castro looks really short, and I never realized that from any video I've seen, because he's honestly not that famous of a candidate. There's a couple reasons I think Julian Castro's candidacy is real. I don't know if it can really win. The fact that his name is Castro is, I think, for some people, it's unfair, because Castro is a very, very common name in Latin America, very common. But people are not. I don't think people are going to want to vote for somebody named Castro, that name specifically. And he's short. And when you saw him on stage being towered over by Inslee and de Blasio and even Booker here, he just looked like a small person who wasn't really the leader type. I think he has ideas and beliefs, but people were not paying attention to that. Then you have Jay Inslee. I don't think he did a good job. I would say he did much worse than maybe he did around the Cory Booker territory, a D, C minus territory. Tulsi, by the way, I think she got a C. I think she could have done better. She could have been more assertive. She was really swallowed up in the debate. Delaney was able to interject many times and at least try to get heard. She didn't try that, and unfortunately, at a certain point, it becomes necessary. I'm sorry to tell people that you have to sometimes be a jerk in order to get ahead in this type of environment. So that's why I'm putting her a little lower than I'd like to, even though she would still be the only candidate that was on the stage that I would actually consider voting for. Inslee, I would say, would score pretty low. One of the things that he said, which I would say is a real head scratcher, is that he effectively, when Donald Trump said that he's threatening to send some of these migrants up to his state because Inslee is such a big champion of sanctuary cities, Inslee said, well, yeah, I mean, we want as many people as we can get. If he's paying attention to his state, Washington State, the state that he's governing, is a shambles. The state is falling apart. You have homelessness at record levels. The city of Seattle is basically, it's the same story as with San Francisco and with parts of LA. You simply have a stratified society in the most progressive parts of America. You have parts of the cities and parts of the states that enjoy, great services and things like that. And those are where the super rich live. And then there's, slums and tent cities all around the place. And there's not much left for the middle class. That's something that Jay Inslee is not taking into account when he's saying, yeah, bring more people in. Really, Jay, really, there are people who are living in Seattle dealing with the mentally ill walking around. They have no services for them because it's overwhelmed. People with opioid addictions. It is not I make a lot of videos where I clown around. This is not a video where I can find where to clown around because this is a real problem in his state. I don't think it's a laughing matter. I could laugh about it, but I think it's important to put a pin there, as Jamarl Thomas would say, and say, look, how much more can the state take when it's already at its breaking point? Apparently, Jay Inslee thinks that they have inevitable patience and fortitude to just take care of the rest of the world over in Washington State. And I don't think that's the case. Maybe I'm wrong. I have a cousin there, but if you're from Washington State and you have an opinion to give, I know I have at least one or two viewers from there. Let me know. Amy Klobuchar, I would say, had a C or D level performance. Not much remarkable to say about her. The problem with people who are staunch centrists is that when you talk about, I'm from the center, I like to reach across the aisle. Reaching across the aisle does not elicit the passion of the voter, and certainly not in the way that Amy Klobuchar is talking about. And then there's also just spouting like useless platitudes, things. It's really that's the problem with Klobuchar's candidacy up until now. There's very little to talk about except for weird stories like the salad comb. What are you supposed to say? So yeah, she's definitely a D. Beto got for sure an F, and he just looked the entire time like he was lost on stage trying to. First of all, the whole so this is what I was getting at with Julian Castro and Cory Booker. There was that moment that opened the debate when Beto answered a question concerning the income tax, whether a 70% income tax would be a good idea, and he just went off into this discourse in Spanish. He started off in Spanish talking about how democracy needs to be protected and eliminate gerrymandering and eliminating, and then he had to stop and translate what he said into English, and by then he'd run out of time for his response, and the moderator, Samantha Guthrie, had to ask him the question again and demand that he answered it. So yeah, Beto O'Rourke for sure an F. I don't know who in their right mind would vote for this absolute idiot who a couple times did this stunt with slipping into Spanish. Now, the fact is that it's bad enough that Beto did it. It's already it's piling on and adding insult to injury when Cory Booker had his famous moment when he started trying to say what he wanted to say in Spanish, and it just came out incredibly awkward, and saying that this is unacceptable, whatever is going on at the border, and all of that. Yeah, it was clearly forced, and it was clearly something that these people were trying to do in order to pander. And the pandering for the Latinos, I think, they'll have to pay a price when it comes to the voters for other minority groups that were not mentioned as much during the debate, which would be black voters. They did mention gay voters a little, which it's like, how much more can they beat a dead horse? They just talk about Cory Booker really did pander to the gays, by the way, with calling this. Now there's this epidemic of, I guess, transsexuals who are killed by people who discover that they're transsexuals that they're in relationships with, and Booker is comparing that to lynching. I think that is an issue that could be discussed. I don't think it's really a good idea to compare it with lynching. Okay, maybe I'm wrong, but you know what? That's another comment topic. What do you guys think? Let me know. I don't know how to handle that. I just think there was something wrong with what he was saying, in my opinion. So yeah, Beto got for sure an F. Another F minus. Tim Ryan, my congressman, or no, he's not my congressman, but he's a congressman from Niles, which is in the Youngstown area of Ohio. And this exchange between him and Tulsi is something that'll stick with me.
Today, the Taliban claimed responsibility for killing 2 American service members in Afghanistan. Leaders as disparate as President Obama and President Trump have both said that they want to end U.S. involvement in Afghanistan, but it isn't over for America. Why isn't it over? Why can't presidents of very different parties and very different temperaments get us out of there? And how could you?
I appreciate that question. So I've been in Congress 17 years. And 12 of those years, I've sat on the Armed Services Committee, either the Defense Appropriations Committee or the Armed Services Committee. And the lesson that I've learned over the years is that you have to stay engaged in these situations. Nobody likes it. It's long. It's tedious. But right now so I would say we must be engaged in this. We must have our State Department engaged. We must have our military engaged to the extent they need to be. But the reality of it is this president doesn't even have people appointed in the State Department to deal with these things, whether we're talking about Central America, whether we're talking about Iran, whether we're talking about Afghanistan. We've got to be completely engaged. And here's why. Because these flare-ups distract us from the real problems in the country. If getting drones shot down for $130 million because the president is distracted, that's $130 million that we could be spending in places like Youngstown, Ohio, or Flint, Michigan.
So this point, I think he was trying to get at the fact that you have to be tuned in all the time to international situations. But he really did, he was cornered pretty closely on this. Here, watch.
Or rebuilding. Congresswoman Gabbard, I'm going to give you 30 seconds, actually, to jump off what he said. He described engagement as the problem. Is that what you will tell the parents of those 2 soldiers who were just killed in Afghanistan? Well, we just have to be engaged. As a soldier, I will tell you that answer is unacceptable. We have to bring our troops home from Afghanistan. We are in a place in Afghanistan where we have lost so many lives. We've spent so much money that's coming out of every one of our pockets, money that should be going into communities here at home, meeting the needs of the people here at home. We are no better off in Afghanistan today than we were when this war began. This is why it's so important to have a president and commander-in-chief who knows the cost of war and who's ready to do the job on day one. I am ready to do that job when I walk into the Oval Office. Thank you very much.
Listen, I'm going to go down the line. I'm going to go down the line here. Well, you know what? You felt like she was responding. You get 30 seconds. Go.
Good man.
Fair
I
enough.
Appreciate that.
I hear what you're saying.
I would just say I don't want to be engaged. I wish we were spending all this money in places that I've represented that have.
So first he says, well, it's important to stay engaged. Now he says, I don't want to be engaged. Now, he's trying to say, well, I would like not to be involved, but I guess you just have to. That was a show of weak-kneed caving. If he now again, I agree with Tulsi Gabbard more than Tim Ryan. There's always a case for intervention. And the problem is that when you make the case for intervention, you have to, like Tulsi Gabbard is saying, be able to go to the people who end up, having their sister die, or their brother die, or their son, or their daughter, or their husband, or their wife dying. How do you think it must have been for the people who went to the servicemen who died in Grenada? Okay, in the 80s, which was not the worst it's not Quagmire, but it was not exactly the greatest example of American projection of power on the world stage, because it was kind of a joke operation, and it had like a lot of really bad technical snags and horrible deaths that could have been avoided. How do you think that must have felt? Should you have gone to those people and said, well, we had to stay engaged because Grenada and Cuba and whatever? No, I think that this was a huge show of the shallowness of Tim Ryan's perspective.
Have been completely forgotten, and we were rebuilding. But the reality of it is, if the United States isn't engaged, the Taliban will grow, and they will have bigger, bolder terrorist acts. We have got to have some present there.
The Taliban was there long before we came in. They'll be there long before we leave.
Well,
we cannot keep U.S. troops deployed to Afghanistan thinking that we're going to somehow squash this Taliban that has been there, that every other country that's tried has failed.
I didn't say squash them. When we weren't in there, they started flying planes into our buildings. So I'm just saying right now,
the Taliban didn't attack us on 9/11. Al-Qaeda did.
Well, I understand.
Al-Qaeda attacked us on 9/11.
I understand.
That's why I and so many other people joined the military to go after Al-Qaeda, not the Taliban.
The Taliban was protecting those people who were plotting against us. All I'm saying is, if we want to go into elections and we want to say that we got to withdraw from the world, that's what President Trump is saying. We can't. I would love for us to.
You know who's protecting Al-Qaeda right now? In Saudi Arabia.
That was Tim Ryan exposed. Tulsi Gabbard, not the best debate today or yesterday, but in this instance, she basically slaughtered him. And then there was another part where he agreed to all the gun control crazy policies that everybody else had agreed to. I think that Tim Ryan's campaign is garbage, and I was willing to wait and see. I have no clue how people are going to vote for him, especially if you're from Ohio. Ohio is a very pro-gun state. If you're still planning to vote for him and you're from Ohio, I'm not. You're probably one of the progressive crazy people, or you are brainwashed for whatever reason. Because there's a lot of other people who offer the same crap as Tim Ryan, and they don't look nearly as disorganized. Finally, Elizabeth Warren, it was pretty clear in the debate that the moderators were trying to feed to her every advantage possible. They were going to her more than ever, and it was pretty suspicious. And therefore, I don't know if I can award a grade because, a lot of her answers were the standard Elizabeth Warren answers and was very expected. So I'd have to give her, on this scale, which is really performance-based, a B-. Not because she did horrible or whatever, but because so much of what she did was just unremarkable, but it wasn't a catastrophe. So she's fairly average. So once again, the grades are Cory Booker, F, Bill de Blasio, B+, Julian Castro, D, John Delaney, I would say he had an A-, just performance-based. Tulsi Gabbard, C. Jay Inslee, F. Amy Klobuchar, also somewhere down there, like a D or an F. Beto O'Rourke and Tim Ryan, for sure, an F. And Elizabeth Warren, she probably gets like a B-. Then you have the takeaways from the night. And people are already spitting this, oh, Elizabeth Warren won, she won. No, nobody paid attention to any, I would say few people paid attention to what she was saying because there was so much crazy crap that other people were saying. It says here, Castro had a breakout moment. I don't remember this. It says Castro's passion and detailed knowledge of the issue was readily apparent, and it may help him to become the breakout star of this debate. Castro also got the better of his rivals, notably former Rep. Beto O'Rourke of Texas, on the topic. Castro accused O'Rourke of not having done his homework, one of several bad moments for the once hyped O'Rourke. And it's saying that there was a 2,400% spike in Google searches for Castro's name. That doesn't matter anymore since Google appears to be a joke. It appears to be a joke now. So I don't care. I think they're going to be hyping Castro soon. I don't think he's going anywhere. And you had, let me see here, de Blasio perhaps the next best. Yeah, I mean, I would say so. They're going to be spinning this in such a way. Look, any momentum that anybody gains from this debate will have to be replicated at the next one. And I think that in many cases, some of these people had one chance and they blew it. The people who really blew it, I would say, are Tim Ryan and Beto O'Rourke. And you could probably say Klobuchar as well. Inslee, I don't think got any traction unless you're talking about climate change fanatics. And, we'll see what happens. I don't know if anybody's going to drop out yet. And remember, there's still tomorrow night where you're going to see some of these other clowns. Marianne Williamson, she's going to bring up the reparations, which was curiously not very prominent tonight. In fact, I don't know if I heard it at all. Maybe I missed something. You have Kamala Harris. Oh, that's going to be nauseating. You're going to have Mayor Pete, who's in bad shape. Michael Bennett, who's a faceless mannequin. And then Eric Swalwell, of course, the clown. Probably the biggest joke in the race, and that's a real contest. So that's an accomplishment. Bernie, everybody loves Bernie, I guess. He's going to have a difficult night going up against some of these other people. Of course, Joe Biden. And who else do we have here? Andrew Yang. I hope that Andrew Yang shows up in much more aggressive form than I saw Tulsi on Wednesday night. I think that maybe he could do a different approach. I could be wrong, but there's a lot of people waiting for Andrew Yang to have his breakout moment, and we'll see if it happens. That's about it. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also subscribe to me on Minds.com and on BitChute and on Subscribestar if you want to donate. Those all have the username Chef Leopard. My Gab account is @Starscream85, and on Parler it is @RazorRay. I'll talk to you possibly tomorrow.